welcome, Housers, to another episode of On the Way Home. I am your host, Michael Braithwaite from Blue Door. Blue Door is an organization in the north of the GTA that is focused on housing, health, and employment for our most vulnerable across York Region, Durham Region, and Peel in the northern part of the GTA. And a shout out to the 100 plus staff at Blue Door, the frontline heroes making that happen. We do all sorts of stuff. Number one, we find people deeply affordable and supportive housing on many different levels. We do that for seniors, for families, for 2S LGBTQ plus youth, and many, many more as well. We give them access to adequate health care throughout the region. And we also provide them with meaningful and well-paid employment through our construction social enterprise construct. So if you want to check out more of our work, go to www.bluedoor.ca. We do this in partnership with the fine folks at the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness. While you're listening to this podcast, we'll actually be right in the thick of their giant conference in Halifax. Thousands of people in attendance, people from all over the world, great speakers, great topics. Listen, it is a great conference. We're going to find out where next year's conference is. Be sure to go. But they do much, much more in the field of advocacy and training. Check out all the work they do at caeh.ca. Now let's get to today's guest. Many of us see people experiencing homelessness. We see people on the streets, and we think someone should do something about it. Our guest today saw this and was actually with his young son many, many years ago. They saw someone on the streets, and instead of assuming what that person needed, they asked him. And he said, I could really use a blanket. And so they went out and they got a blanket. But that keyed an idea in Gregory Ould and his son. When they talked about it, they said, maybe we could do this again. But little did he know that many, many years later, and thousands of blankets later, the BC Blanket Society would be born. So we talked to Greg about what spurred this. And this is a part-time gig for Greg. He works full-time. He does this. It's another full-time job. And it's really, really important to him. His son, now a grown man, is on his board of directors. It's an incredible story of someone taking action to be a part of the solution. It's inspiring, and it's very, very emotional at times. A great listen and great to talk to someone and learn how they went from watching others do things to being a leader and doing something about it. Something as simple as giving someone a blanket. Take a listen to this one. I think you're really going to enjoy it. So glad here on the podcast. Thanks for making the time to join us.
Hey, Mike, thank you very much for having me on Blue Door. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So we start every podcast with the same question, and that is because it's a little personal to everyone. And so there's no right or wrong answer, and that is, what does home mean to you?
There are a lot of answers to what home means to me, or a home means to anyone. But a home is where the heart is the old saying, the old adage. And for me personally, I'm always at home when I'm with my kids, no matter where I am and around the world. If I'm with my kids, I'm home. Now, that's not to say that I work with a lot of people that do not have a home. And that's a hard question to ask them. So I ask them, what does a blanket mean to you? And oftentimes a blanket is their only home. And those are often the answers that I get. And it breaks my heart. But it also warms my heart to know that we are out there providing homes in a way to others.
You're keeping people alive. You're keeping them safe. We want to get into that. But so listeners, if you're watching on video, you'll see that Gregory has Mr. Warmth as his title. So, and you'll understand why in a minute. And if you're just listening via audio, just to let you know. So this is, Gregory or Mr. Warmth. Let's understand how you became Mr. Warmth. Talk us through your journey, probably in second grade when you get, there was career day or parents came in and talked about the things you wanted to grow up to be. It wasn't Mr. Warmth. Can you walk
Yeah.
us through your journey into this work? Where did you start? How did you come upon it? How did this happen?
Um, well, let's go back a little further. When I was a kid, I had a lot of energy. Um, a lot of people were focused on the negative of, oh, you have ADHD, you are hyperactive. I think all kids are at one time or another until they learn how to focus. Um, I learned how to focus as an actor, as a performer, and for 23 years, that's what I did. And I enjoyed that journey. And but I made a promise to my wife at the time that when the time came that we would have children, that's when I would step away and do real work. And that was difficult to say the least. But moving forward, a few years later, when my son was around 2 years old, something magical happened, something that changed my life, the life of my family, and m- being able to touch the lives of thousands over the years. So I was coming out of a movie that I was in downtown Vancouver in Tinseltown. And this podcast, we're actually a few days after our 18-year anniversary, October 15th, 2005. I'm coming out of the theater and I see a man in an alcove, and oftentimes you see people sitting down in stoops, um, huddled, and you just bypass them. You know, um, well, our eyes met, and something compelled me to go up to this gentleman and talk to him. And I knew he was in rough shape. I knew he was a street survivor. He was very weathered. He's probably about my age now, 49, but he looked much older, much, much older. And I asked him if there's anything I can do to help you. And he simply said I could use a blanket to survive the night. That's it. Well, you can imagine, if you really take all that in, you're trying to figure out, wait, hold on now. A blanket to survive the night. You mean you can die if you don't have a blanket? Like, it didn't compute in my head. And I was like, something like a lightning bolt hit me, and I felt uh, compelled to go get this gentleman a blanket. So I did. Went around the corner, found a store that was just closing. I asked them if they had a warm blanket. I said yes. I got one. And when I came back to that gentleman, he was still sitting there. Um, and to be honest with you, while I was approaching, my thought of, why did he ask for a blanket? Why didn't he ask for something like normal, like a cigarette, coffee, food, drugs? I just, it just was one of those moments in life that really, it's one of those aha moments. Um, and when I gave him a blanket, I don't remember a conversation with him. I just remember the look, and I'll never forget the look until the day I die. He was stunned that somebody, I'd imagine that's what he was thinking, somebody listened to him and took action upon his request without judging, without questioning, just helping. But it wasn't until later when I was playing with my son, Ben, who was 2 at the time, and I told him what happened. And then I thought, wouldn't it be cool if you and I went around collecting and handing out blankets to people in need to keep them warm? And like Batman and Robin, we're not unlike Batman and Robin, we're not fighting um, bad guys, but we're fighting homelessness, poverty, we're loneliness. and we're providing warmth from our hearts. And I'll never forget, he turned to me and he went, "Yeah." Big fat cheeks, stunning blue eyes, big smile. How could you turn that down, right? So he really was the catalyst, because I don't know if I would have gone any further except for that, you know, one act of kindness. And now, 18 years later, where now my son is 19 and on the board of directors at Blanket BC, um, I honestly, I couldn't be more thrilled and proud of the man he's become. And same with my daughters, Emma, who's now 16, and of course Zoe, who's 3. But they all participate, and they love participating in community events. They love helping out, and it's great. It's very cool.
A very cool story, very touching story. What strikes me, there's a few takeaways there. Number one, your son is now your boss, really, if he's on your board of directors, which is cool.
Affirmative, yes.
That's awesome. But the fact that, yeah, just, and that's how a lot of great things start, is with that realization. You had kind of that, wow, wait a second. And to teach your kids young and have them grow up with that thought too, of noticing, because I think part of the challenge across Canada, Gregory, is that I think Canadians generally, and I'm sure you've seen this, and we'll talk about Blanket BC Society, but Canadians are generally pretty empathetic. They just don't really know how deep the problem runs, right? They just see little clips
Mhm.
on, they see street homelessness a bit in BC, especially downtown east side quite a bit, but they don't know how deep
Yeah.
it runs, and then a lot of it's hidden as well, right? So I think once they do,
Mhm.
and that's part of why we do this podcast and why we do a lot of talking, is to create that awareness. You're doing a lot of that work. Tell us a little bit about Blanket BC. uh, you say 18 years. How does it work, from the first thing of, hey, it's my son and I, how the heck did it grow into what it is now?
Um, well, in the beginning, we weren't sure what we were doing. In fact, 18 years later, I still don't know what I'm doing. I don't. Like, I'm the worst executive director of all time. But I do it with love and passion, and that's been able to get us through. So, Blanket BC's mission is to collect and distribute blankets and warm clothing for shelter programs, families in need. We work with Indigenous communities here on the West Coast, and we're truly honored by that. Um, we talk about socioeconomic issues, and we really promote volunteerism at a young age, because, hey, Ben was 2 when we started this journey together. And what amazes me is, when I first started, I was working. In fact, I'm actually in, I don't know how many podcasts guests you've had who are doing a podcast from their mobile office, but I'm just going to pan up a little, and you can see some of the blankets that we collected. I've got about 600 blankets that we're delivering today, in the downtown east side, and Coquitlam, and tomorrow in Surrey. Um, but uh, I'm losing the thoughts and the questions. But I think it's very cool to know that, um, when I first started this, at I was working for Bell, and I was talking to my manager, Vicky Ursaki, and Marcus Fromm, who has recently passed on, and they were instrumental in helping actually kind of start the function, the gears working towards how to do pickup and deliveries and all that kind of stuff, on a small scale. And we wanted to come up with a name, uh, and Blanket BC was kind of like, well, we're delivering blankets in BC, so that kind of makes sense. But I thought about it more and more, and I thought, we're creating beautiful communities. We're creating beautiful communities from the warmth from our heart. It's by doing good and by providing your time to community service, you create beautiful communities. So that's how we came up with Blanket BC. And Modestly, we collected about 67 blankets the first time in the first year in that season, and then the following year we collected over 2,000. And then the following year, we got traction with working with companies like Cabro Linen Systems, and then we started collecting thousands, thousands upon thousands. Uh, 2008, I think we collected over 15,000 blankets, and now on average we collect about 35,000 blankets a year and distribute them to people in need, not just in the Lower Mainland, but all around the world. It's been really, really cool to be able to partner with other organizations to know our blankets, your blankets, your viewers and your listeners' blankets who we collect from are making a huge warm impact all around the world and here at home. It's pretty cool. 700,000 blankets to date. It's
Wow,
pretty cool.
that is crazy. And you formed an organization. Tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about, like, so how many volunteers, how many staff? Is it just you? Is it you and volunteers, or how does it work?
Okay, so I do the majority of the pickup and deliveries. I've always loved doing that. But we do have a lot of we have over the years we've had such amazing, brilliant, and hearty personalities on our board of directors, um, helping shape and form governance and all that kind of stuff, all the back end stuff. I was on the board for many many years. Um, Nobody gets paid at Blanket BC. It's all volunteer, 100% volunteer. We're not a charity yet, but this has been our crux. This has been that thorn in my foot because you need to have professional people on the board. We've had passionate people, and that doesn't necessarily equate to getting to the next steps. As a nonprofit, there's a lot of people that want to start nonprofits, and uh, for me, just from advice, I would say, where do you want to take it? And if you want to take it as far as you want, like you want to become like Terry Fox Foundation or the Canadian Cancer Foundation, AIDS Foundation of Vancouver, you or even Michael J. Fox Foundation, you need to have professionals on your board. You need to have chartered accountants. You need to have lawyers, people who are willing to give their time. Um, and you know, even though we've had passionate people, we haven't had the pros, so we haven't been able to get to that next level. But that's our goal. That's my 2-year goal. I want to be able to have to say that in our 20th year we've become a charity, and we can give tax receipts and all that kind of stuff because we don't we've never received a grant. We actually, no, it's not true. We've received one grant in the 18 years that we've been around. One. So it's been people power. um,
Wow, so are you telling me you this is it full time for you? You do this full time on top of another full time job, or is it
so yeah,
blankets
so
all
that
the time?
no okay, so I probably put in about 20 hours a week during like the spring and summer months. And in fall and winter, I'm putting in a lot more hours. I It's not a job, it's volunteer.
Gosh.
But yeah, it's passion. It's a hobby. It's just like any other, hobbyist out there, right? They put all their hours into it, but they don't, get paid for it. I don't get paid for it. It'd be nice. Be nice to get reimbursed every once in a
Mhm.
while too.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy. It ruined relationships. My first wife, I loved her to death, but it just didn't work out. And part of that reasoning is because of my focus on Blanket BC as opposed to the family. So I've learned to balance that a lot better now. And my new wife, Famika, she makes sure she puts me down. Hey, hey,
Well, a balanced leader is a better leader. Let's
yeah.
be honest. So let's talk about some of your partners. Who do you work with? Who do you support in the BC area? You talked about some of your Indigenous partners. Who are some others that have come on board, and uh, what has the response been from the community?
Well, the response from the community has been great, especially in November. Every third week of November, we host North America's largest blanket drive. I've been trying to get like mayors and the Metro Vancouver mayors on board. It's really difficult. I know they have busy schedules, but they seem to have their charities that they want to work with. Um, Not to say that they're diminishing what we do, but our partners in the past uh, have all been, there for us to help us out through our journey. You know, you know how sometimes you meet people, and you meet them for a reason, but they're not there for life. They're there to help you get to that next step, or help you along. So I'd say ULOC Mini Storage was one of our finest partners. They gave us a ridiculous amount of storage space over a 5 or 6 year period, all for free. And we're talking well over 70,000 dollars worth of storage space. Um, Never asked for charity receipts. They just did it out of the goodness of their hearts. Now, we've we've um, we've recently parted ways, but that's only because their focus is going a different direction. So now we're looking for other partners in the locker space because we need space. We get a ridiculous amount of blankets, and um, I don't want to be bringing them into my house like years ago. In the beginning, and you come to my home and there's just chock full of blankets. You're like, what are you doing here? But Cabro Linen Systems is another fantastic partner. They provide us like the blankets in the back here. They provide us all these gently used sheets and thermals that we can hand out readily to people in need immediately. um, and I mean, there's so many partners that like to participate. I'd say the folks at the Canada Line, which is the train system that operates in Richmond and airport all the way to Vancouver, where we host Blanket BC's Drive on the Line campaign every November. They've been amazing to allow us to utilize 9 different stations over a 2-day period. The ProTrans BC, which are the operators of Canada Line, have always been there for me since I've been working for them for 15 years. So I marry my, how most people might like to get away from their jobs. Yeah, I kind of put both of them together over a weekend. Um, yeah, I think it takes a little bit of life away from me. I'm shortening my life expectancy, but it's all for the betterment of humanity, I think.
Very cool. Yes, absolutely it is. You're saving and changing lives. You're giving people faith in other human beings and much, much more. Let's talk a little bit. Can you share some stories? You must have, apart from that first encounter, you must have some amazing stories and touching stories of people that you've seen supported, and maybe some really happy stories of people, and probably some others that are not.
Well, I would love to. There are thousands of stories. There's a few that hit me hard. One, we were the board at the time, and I were doing a tour of the downtown east side SROs, which are single room occupancies. They're homes, they're housing that are not necessarily in the best of shapes. They're very tough to go through. The smells, the visuals, they're very hard. But that's why I take my board out, because they need to know who are the people we're helping. And we had my son with us that's this particular day, and he was quite young. And I think he was around 6, 7, or 8. And we're going up the stairwell, and there was a female sitting down, just about to inject heroin or something. And she looked up, and my son came over, and most people would be freaking out. And I'm not suggesting I want people to take their kids into dangerous situations. We were in no danger. Um, she was sick, this lady, and Ben came over and put his hands on her shoulder, and it was sh- she put the needle away, and I remember my son saying, you know, "You're sick and you need help. Can we help you?" And it was a very powerful moment to witness. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional, but when I think about that and I remember that day, my team were just in amazement. They couldn't believe what they were seeing, and Ben potentially saved her life that day. And that compassion, children have compassion. We lose it somewhere, and we need to keep that compassion within us, even though it's very difficult sometimes. These are people. They're just like you and I, and they had a life outside of what their situation is now and then. And we need to remember that that could be us in a year or two. That's why we need to stay focused and have compassion for others, and have compassion for yourself. That's something I've learned over the years, my 49 years. Um, but that day was one of the most powerful days. And then we've had other amazing experiences where we've had some folks volunteer with us, um, like on the Canada line, on the driving the line. They were affected by our blankets. They were, um, I remember a gentleman by the name of Roger who said that if it wasn't for the 3 or 4 blankets that we gave him, he would have died. And so he came back the next year, you know, and volunteered his time. And then with the little money that he had, he put it in one of our money jars. And I turned to him, I said, "Why are you doing that?" And he says, "Because I also want to give back. And this is my way of thanking you." Sorry.
No, hey man, very very touching stories, and you can see where your passion lies. So just beautiful. Um, And I think people, quite often, Gregory, people will ask the question of, I see someone on the street, what can I do? And I think what you're doing in your words there, um, it's around that compassion, right? If we have compassion for our fellow human beings, right, that goes a long way. And you see me as a person, and how why we use that term, person experiencing homelessness, because we want you to see the person, not the experience they're going through. Just like you said, these are mothers, fathers, grandfathers, friends, uncles,
Mhm.
aunts. They're people, right? And I
Yeah.
think sometimes we lose that humanity when we see them and think of something else, and judgments pass. But no judgment with you and your team of volunteers. Some beautiful stories. What's next for the organization? What are your hopes for the future? Because I know it does. It starts with a blanket, and you hope that it
Mhm.
ends with more help in housing and
Mhm.
moving forward. What are your hopes?
Um, well, I want to talk about very quickly my team, my board of directors. I've got Christina, TJ, Benedicta, Sean Williams has been a long time board member and good friend to the organization. He lives in Virginia. And Ben, of course. We're hoping to um, gather more experienced board members, because if we want to um, have a future, you need to have the right team in place, and we're starting to get that right team in place. People who are actually going to make a big difference. Where we want to go is, to be honest with you, I don't want to do this anymore. And I may that they may that may shock people, but I don't want to have SROs. I don't want shelters. I don't want food banks. I don't want any of that. because if we can do the right thing as a society, we wouldn't need them all. Like that should be the mission and vision of every nonprofit out there, right? Obviously, that's not going to happen, not anytime soon. So we are going to be here as long as we have to be. And to be honest with you, if we keep going the way we're going, this will be here long before or long after I'm gone. Um, but I think what I'd like to do is get that charity status, um, allow us to expand our services, get a couple of vans instead of my own personal van, get like proper vans, get hire drivers who pick up and deliver on a constant basis, have more events instead of just the drive in the line. It'd be nice to have opportunities to give back to all the volunteers that have helped over the years. I'd like to give more recognition to everybody that has participated, um, and even yourself, Michael, by allowing me to be on your show. Um, one At least one more person is going to hear it. Many people are going to hear our story, and hopefully they'll feel the passion. Um, they'll be m- m- Maybe they will be wanting to do their own blanket drive. They'll be inspired to do that. We work with a lot of students. We've had a great relationship with uh, elementary school, middle school, and high schools throughout the years who do their own blanket drives, and they'll call us and we'll come pick them up. And sometimes I do speeches, talk about our story, and it inspires them to not necessarily volunteer with us, but just volunteer in general. I think just volunteering is just an amazing thing for everybody. And who knows? I would love to be able to sit down with a prime minister, not necessarily. It doesn't have to be. I don't care who it is, but it would be nice to be able to sit down with our leader and have a conversation. Be able to allow me to express um, my thoughts and my organization's thoughts on how things possibly could be handled differently. But it would be awesome to be able to also maybe even be recognized a little bit more, because not that we're searching for recognition. We're not going out. You don't. If you go to my socials, you're not going to see me going, "Hey, everybody, I'm here with Frank, and I'm going to give him a blanket. Yay!" I don't know why people do that. I think it's. I don't know what you think of it. What do you think of that kind of stuff when you see that?
It's got to be choice, right? So there's someone who does that. I don't know if you know who Leah Denbach is. She's an amazing, young, talented photographer, and her dad will pay individuals experiencing homelessness to tell their stories if it's their
Mm,
choice to take a picture, so they matter. And her
right.
pictures are gorgeous. Then she sells the books to bring money back to a charity. And then the people that she's taking pictures of said, I'll matter to someone. It's heartbreaking, right? Like I'll
Mhm.
be at least, someone will see me. Um,
See,
so
that's
there's
cool. That
there's
that
that.
I
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm talking about, the social media kids y- y- who are
Yeah. I
doing it, I
mean,
think,
again,
for self.
it's exploitation, right? So if you're exploiting it,
Yes.
yes. But I'll tell you,
Yeah.
like, I'll tell you this. I mean, I use social media. I believe in it, not to exploit people. It's got to be their choice. But
Mm,
when you get people, it's a great way to rally support around your cause, right? To say, oh, I get
yeah.
it. That's something I can do. Anyone could give a blanket out, right? Like really, it doesn't take a lot except your time and some compassion, and they could come help you out. This is the easiest way to be part of the solution, right?
Yeah.
A corporate that said we can do a blanket drive. Of course we can. That's good. Like so. So let's talk about that too. Um, two last questions. I'm going to ask you how people get involved, but I also want to understand so people understand. If you're listening to this, we do have listeners across Canada and around the world. In BC, homelessness is a huge and growing challenge, right? And weather related too. As you said in your car right now,
Mm,
it's a very wet, cold climate. Not so much it's snowy at times, but when so I the reason I'm saying this, Gregory, too, is I remember talking to a guy on the street once, and I said, "Do you have a sleeping bag?" He's like, "Yeah, I got four, but I threw them all out because they got wet." Because when you're on the street, and so they often will
Mm,
say that rain is the worst because everything you have gets soaked and you're starting from scratch,
mm.
right? With blankets, I would assume as well. There's nowhere to dry it. And in your climate, it's like that. Anyways, I'm rambling on to say, can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing across BC with people experiencing homelessness? It just kind of paint a picture.
Well, I can tell you it's getting worse. And it's not even just the homeless that we help out, it's families. It's a lot of families in needs, um, Indigenous, communities that have very little. I mean, in Gord Downey talked about it a lot before his death. Uh, he wants more assistance for the Native communities in Northern Ontario, who like didn't have like running water for ever and a day, or um, and with inflation and cost of living going through the roof. More and more people are, they have to make decisions that are tougher. Like, do we have food for the week? But so if we do, then we're gonna have to turn off all the heat in the house, and it's a tougher choice. The weather out here does suck. I tell people don't come in November to like end of March. Please stay home. Um, and that's because it's because of the wet weather. It doesn't necessarily even have to be raining. It's just the moisture in the air that just gets right to the bones. They don't even open up. And I hate these shelters that it's not. I love the shelters. I don't like the fact that the government states they need to be open only when it's a certain degree out. I think it was like at one time it was like -2 or 3, which is just ridiculous. Now I think it's 5 degrees, but they should just be open anyway. Just have the shelters there, open them up. Um, the weather makes it hard for a lot of people. We give them out blankets, and that's why we're always asking for blankets, because people are always in need. Even in summertime, when we had the heat dome a few years ago, people couldn't lie down on the street. It was so hot. So we were literally handing out thousands of blankets to people on the street, and they would lay them down just just to not burn themselves. Um, and also we hand out blankets to sick kids and single moms, and it helps. Blankets help, and they're not just keeping people warm, or from overheating, but also comforts them, right? What's the first thing that what's the first thing that we get when we're born? We're swaddled in a blanket, right? So there's a huge meaning to that. um, we were honored about 4 years ago, by the Kwantlen First Nation with the button blanket ceremony, and myself and Ben and Emma and even my father, who was sick at the time, was honored with a blanket ceremony, and I couldn't believe the power of the ceremony. It was just so overwhelming, and to know that a blanket just means way more than just coziness. Right? There's a spirit behind it, right? There's a love behind it. And I think that's what drives. That's why we're like the engine, the little engine that could, getting up that mountain. It's sometimes it's you don't have the engine, but you have the spirit, and that's what's going to get you up that hill, right? I don't know if I'm rambling now.
No, and it's wonderful. I mean, I think when I think of a phrase, I think for you and for many people is that be the change you want to see in this world. You are absolutely
Mm.
being that change, and we are grateful for it. If people want to support uh, Blanket BC Society, where do they go? How can they get involved? Can they give? Can they do a blanket? How do they do a blanket drive? Where do they find out more?
www.blanketbc.org is our website. And if they want to do a blanket drive, it's not hard. You just you know you if you're at work, talk to your colleagues and say, hey, I'd like to collect like 20 blankets this week, guys. Do you think you guys could maybe look in your closets, and then go to your local shelter and drop them off? Make sure everything's laundered and clean. um and students out there, anyone listening, if you're a teacher, talk to the kids about, what does a blanket mean to you, you know and have the kids draw blankets and color. If they want to donate their time, I'm always looking for people to help out, and not only distribute but collect, and just raise awareness, show that compassion, in your community. I've never always been like a numbers guy, but it's money is tight. Money is, how they say, shoestring budget. Well, there's little things, the flugel binders, at the end of your shoestring. That's our budget. And if we can do it, you can do it too. Like, it's amazing what you can do with nothing, but heart.
It is, and you're leading by example. We are truly grateful. Thank you for all you do. You're saving lives. You're making a difference. You're inspiring others. Thank you so much for all you do. Thank you for your time today. As you sit in your van doing your blanket deliveries, and I know you've got a lot going on. You said you slept a couple hours. I do have one final question. What
Sure.
was the name of the movie you were in with that fateful night? Would we know it?
Uh,
Do you remember?
it was either To Each His Own or Sister Blue. I can't remember. It was one of the two.
So go out, rent that movie,
Good luck.
support. But better yet,
Don't
go
don't
to
watch it. I'm horrible. I was a horrible actor. Horrible.
go to I don't believe it once I go to Blanket BC and be a part of the solution, just like Gregory has. Gregory, thank you so much for your time today. We'll see you next
Thank
time
you, Michael.
on the way home.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.